Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Biz Dev Live with Cameron Toth. I am looking so forward to bringing to you Mr. Steve Spiro, master networker, somebody that has really changed my life just with the book revelation. Really cool. Steve, lower your volume a little bit. I think there's a little bit of feedback. For anybody that hasn't picked up this book, he recommended it to me, and I'm recommending it to everybody for building your business. Just a great book. Been huge. That's the type of value that Steve brings to just about every conversation. We're going to get into how you network right. I'm really appreciative of the work that he does. Looking forward to getting into a really deep conversation. Steve, I want to fill folks in on your background. Can you give us a little bit more detail on who you are and what you're doing right now?
Sure. So background, started my first company out of college in advertising. I did that for a lot of years, and then kind of shifted focus, pivoted, right? The buzzword of today into technology, and had a very successful mentor come into my life and kind of helped get me into self-development. And a shy introverted kid from the Bronx all of a sudden became a big networker, and I've established it's like 16,000 contacts on my phone, and I think I'm at 10,000 plus connections on LinkedIn. And I have a personal goal of meeting, connecting with, turning 3 perfect strangers into friends or connections every single day. And obviously with COVID, it's a little different, but that means living my life, going to the deli and talking to people or whatever, and just trying to add value to people in their life. And, I am a consultant. I help automate and streamline how companies are communicating with their clients. So, obviously, but more, I think we're talking about today is the networking. I do some mentoring. I love giving back and helping people. And I've even volunteered a score to help further that cause of mentoring business owners and professionals.
That's awesome. And, I met you through Master Networks. I think Rob Genovese probably introduced us.
He is the hookup. Rob is a great guy. Him and his wife, great people. Known them for like 20 years. So great people.
Yeah, I've just gotten such great value from being a part of the organization and jumping right into the networking thing. Something that changed for me in December was this idea of face-to-face meetings where we're talking in a way where we're actually listening to each other. So I've had these conversations because I've been active in associations. I'm a member of several different associations, and it's very interesting to me that although I've been an active networker, I've been in and around associations for, at least the last 14 years, like really actively, that not until the end of last year, beginning of this year, am I actually feeling like I'm networking in the best way possible, which is I go into a conversation and I'm really just listening and deep diving into like what a person is about, what their background is about, who they are, and then working really diligently to figure out how I can connect them to the best possible person, or if there's something I can do to help them, but just attacking relationships that way. It's so huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. Yep. And I think our face-to-face and or conversation, I think it was a phone conversation. It was before COVID, but
let me tell you, I was in the Chrysler building, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It wasn't that long ago, but I was talking from the Chrysler building, my office in the Chrysler building, and I was sitting there, and I remember writing down the E-Myth, and I got to tell you, that's a change of my life moment, because I wish I read that book 9 years ago, and the power of that, just one little conversation, to deep dive in this, because I think I'm setting you up here. One little conversation, if you're really open to it, can really change your life.
No doubt about it. And well before COVID, I was doing face-to-face on Zoom and other, remote related communication. And I've always believed in this. And it's funny, you get on and, you and I, Cameron, we're big networkers, right? So you get on and often people want to just start with, what do you do? And I kind of, in a friendly way, I say, if it's okay with you, I'd love for us to get into kind of our backgrounds, our stories, what makes us tick? How do we get started? What, our journey, and I say it's so valuable to understand, what a person's about, not what they do. Certainly we can get to that. But the challenge is, if you're going to do business ultimately with somebody, you want to know, like, and trust them. And I don't think you're going to get that from just, okay, what do you do? And blah, blah, blah. It's more about connecting with people. And I think in our conversation, obviously in learning about each other, I found out, I think I asked you, if I remember right, I said, what's keeping you up at night? What's your biggest challenges? And you said some things, and that's what made me think. And I'm an avid reader. I average probably about 2 books a month. Thank God for Audible, because I'm learning disabled dyslexic. So I'm listening to books, not reading. But that book came to mind, and I was glad I was able to, suggest it and bring value to you on that. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, that's great. And Audible is a great tip too, just because I definitely dig writing or reading physical books, because you can do notes and highlight.
Yeah.
I got so many books that are piling up on the shelf. So we just got this recommendation, or I'd heard it a couple of times, this Extreme Ownership book.
Great book. Phenomenal.
I thought so too, but I got it via Audible.
Yep.
And I digested it in a weekend, and it gets really hard. I'm a father of 4, my wife.
Yeah.
It's difficult to pick up a book and be able to get through it. I'm sure there's some people that, are out there that can relate. And just a great book. And I'm so glad that I did the Audible thing, because I actually got through it, and I feel like I can already apply. I got my brain thinking on all the different things that I can apply the lessons to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Audible's great. And I don't know if this helps anybody, but, I have mornings, I think you talked about it before we jumped on live. You have a very rigorous morning routine, if you will, and I do as well. It's a big part of my life and what I'm about. And so, start by, making breakfast for me and my wife, and I put on Audible, and it's, I probably get about 20 minutes of a book in, guaranteed, at least every day. I'm not sitting, because I could be doing stuff, and it's not like, I don't need any mental energy to figure out breakfast, but it's a great way to, we are busy today, even though we're in a COVID-19 kind of busy. We're moving, we're shaking, we're doing stuff, and I think Audible's great. You can be productive and put good stuff in your brain.
Yeah, that's a really big deal, because I think we're all trying to learn and grow. Books are one of those keys where we actually can be useful to somebody when we're on the phone with them. I think it's one of those things in terms of being a good networker. I think, if you're looking at Dale Carnegie stuff and everything, they're talking about reading newspapers, and actually reading newspapers like frightening to me now. So maybe a little bit of current events, but probably at the end of the day versus the beginning of the day, because of the way you want to keep yourself in a positive head state. But reading and being informed and being able to apply that to people's business is huge. Talk to me about your background. I know that you do stuff with Quotient and all this stuff around business. Talk to us how you have sort of gotten into this thing. I think it's really interesting. You have like this goal of meeting 3 people a day and all that. Like, where does that come from? Talk to us about that.
Well, over time and through being, having a mentor in my life and kind of, growing and developing me. And I didn't mention this, but I have a background in the martial arts. I started training in '83. I've got a couple black belts. My wife's a black belt too. So, developing and growing and kind of breaking through barriers was something that I've developed and become, and my favorite phrase is there's danger in the comfort zone. And shy introverted kid from the Bronx, there was a lot of things that I've had to overcome as a human, as a person, and so I started to see how networking could be valuable for others, for myself, professionally, personally, and it's been very enhancing. It's very enriching for my life. It's you develop some really cool relationships like you and me, Cameron, and different people. And so, I've had some really cool stories how meeting, somebody just randomly has turned into a blessing. I've got a really good friend of mine. I've known him for probably 15 years as a result of the one time I went to my nephew's soccer game, and he and I were talking, and he's a financial planner, and we just started talking, and random conversation turned into a couple exchanges on email originally, I think it was phone call, and we actually did some business together, not related to financial planning, other stuff. And then eventually we just became really good friends, and we've stayed connected and involved in over the years. I've sent him some business, just pretty cool stuff, right? Just from a random conversation.
Right.
So really cool.
That's amazing. And what are you sort of getting a feeling now? I know you're delving out and you're talking to people, in the midst of this pandemic. So what's the takeaway for folks right now that would love to put this into practice?
I think now is the best time ever to do this, right? I was doing it before, but it's even more relevant today. Number one, I recommend highly go back to your contact list, to your phone, and maybe even go from A to Z and just reconnect with people. Send a WhatsApp message out to them and just reconnect, and just because you care, right? Second thing, if you have a client base, reach out. How you doing? How's everything going? Not with an agenda, but just because you care. That's another way to do it. And then, as you're growing and developing your network, right? Whether it be through the way I was talking about, which is not doing that much these days because we're all masked and gloved up, and it's hard and I don't get out that much, but whether it be through social media, I love to connect with new people on LinkedIn, and or through meeting people through things like master networks, which we belong to, right? Other networking groups, and visiting those networking groups. It's so cool that we can go and at least I don't know how it's with all the other ones, but with ours, you can go visit different chapters. And let's be honest, prior to that, driving to maybe Yorktown from Stanford or driving to Poughkeepsie is, it's not that convenient, especially at like 7:38 in the morning. But now you could, go from your pajamas, throw on a nice shirt, 8 o'clock, and you're visiting a chapter, and it's a great way to meet people. And I've gotten some good connections, good business from that kind of interaction. So now is a great time to do it. Now,
both on a regional level and a national level, I think anybody that can reach out to a national audience to not take advantage of the virtual environment right now, where people are, sitting at home and they're doing these networking things from afar. There's tons of events going on. If you feel like you're at home and there's something and you feel like there's nothing going on, you're wrong. Like there's activity all over the place. It's overwhelming if you truly start looking at it. It's just overwhelming. So you got to kind of pick and choose what you got to do. I know we were talking about schedule. You want to talk about the mastermind network that you're putting together and why you're putting that together? We were talking about, my schedule, and I was like, man, I'd love to be a part of that. But I also know what my schedule is right now, and then I start thinking like, well, it's just Mondays. I get, but you gotta manage your schedule. You gotta do the right thing that's for you. But why are you putting this group together? What's the impetus behind it? Why is this something that you're passionate about, and what do you think is the value behind it? And obviously, you don't have the the lock on this. People can do this as well. So maybe lay out the blueprint for folks and kind of let folks know where your mind is at in terms of this being a networking and growing opportunity.
Absolutely. So right now it's going to be Mondays, not this Monday because it's Memorial Day. By the way, thank you for anyone listening or for any family members, for people, men and women that have served this amazing country. Appreciate those who have done that, and thank you for your service. So next Monday, not this Monday, at 8 o'clock. I know that's early. It's Monday morning, but to me, why not a better way to start your day? And so it's going to be, right now it's an open invitation to entrepreneurs and business leaders. The way it's going to be, eventually I'm going to set it where we're going to have a membership. It's not going to be a cost. At least that's not the vision right now. Allow people to visit twice, and then the membership will vote to see if the person coming on is got a good fits the culture, right? But what's a mastermind group? Well, I one of my favorite go-to books is Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and Master Key to Riches. And in both books, and I know there's another book that I think he originally talked about it. He talks about a mastermind group. And granted, the book is a bit in terms of the language and some of the stuff it talks about is dated. I think it was written in the 30s, but it's relevant today. And having a mastermind group where you can have other business leaders. I think many times we work in a vacuum. We have challenges, we have issues, maybe we feel stuck. And it'd be great to have other people, other professionals, other people that have experience and get a different perspective. So the goal is, for now, and you probably know, Cameron, on Fridays, I do a Fired Up Friday networking tip every single Friday in the afternoon. So later today, I'll be getting that one out. I produce it on LinkedIn. And so please feel free to view it.
Do we get the unique take here? We get the scoop here. What are we doing it on today?
It's probably going to be on Mastermind.
Very good.
Mastermind group, right? I'm going to use it to talk about that and why it's valuable. But what's going to happen is I'm going to take whatever the specific topic is for now, and bring that into the Master Network group, and we're going to kind of go into it a little bit. We'll start with that concept. We'll kind of get into that a little bit. And then I'll invite one of the members with a business challenge that they'd like to kind of talk about, and we can collaborate on coming up with some ways in which we can help that business owner. And I'm sure we'll all learn from that. And yeah, there'll be some networking, but it's not really a networking group. It's really meant for people to come together and grow professionally and grow their business, right? So I think it's going to be great. I'm excited about it. It's a principle that's been around for many years. And I'm sure there's other groups that do it, some groups that do it for money. But I'm looking to do it to be, again, add value. I believe that I'm a big believer in the law of sowing and reaping, right? You put out good, you get good back. And that's really my objective here. There's no agenda in this other than how can it be of value to other people, other professionals, out there. And that's it. Yeah.
So you're great, at bringing people in, and I'm excited to see your success in this. What are some tips and tricks, for you in the different ways that you've gone out and sort of brought people into your circle? What are some of the ways that you start conversations? Because I know you have this thing, and obviously it's a little bit different now, but what are your tips and tricks to sort of get conversations started? And let's say somebody is coming at you. I know we talked a little bit about it before, but somebody's coming at you with the transactional piece. How do you switch it over to that listening and engagement and true networking?
That's a great question. So, and I'll just start with me, right? The worst thing I remember, I may have talked about this story on another broadcast at one point, but I was at a networking group prior to COVID with a buddy of mine, and kind of a networking buddy, and he's in financial planning, different guy than the other guy I mentioned. And we're going to this, and we're introducing ourselves. There was a formal presentation, so we're introducing ourselves to one of the speakers. And the speakers asked the question, to my friend, well, what do you do? And about 20 minutes later, and I didn't get even a chance to say what I did. And quite frankly, I if I did, it would have been very brief. I say I do consulting. What do you do? To me, it's not about what I do. It's really not. I want to know what you do. I want to know what you're about. I want to know, what makes you tick. And that's.
Can you explain why?
Say again?
So explain why, because I think, people want to talk about, them. And I think, a big part of what you do in terms of focusing in the conversation on them is people want to talk about themselves. So you're sort of giving them the freedom to do that. But why? So talk to us, why don't you talk about your business and what you do?
Because I think it's for number one, it's repelling. I think it sounds transactional. It sounds salesy, and it's self-focused. And to me, the best way to live your life is others focused. Is selfless versus selfish, right? So, the more I know what you do and what you're about and some of the challenges you have in your life, perhaps I have ways in which I can help you. And maybe it be things that I offer, but maybe not. But either way, I want to be of value to you. It's straight out of, you mentioned Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Straight out of that book, which is, what's somebody's favorite topic? It's themselves. What's their favorite word in the whole wide world? Their name, right? So that is a core instinct for people. So I know the topic, I believe, on this was this broadcast.
Are you networking correctly? Yeah.
Are you networking correctly? So incorrectly, in my opinion, is start with, with selling what you do and all about who you are and, not who you are, what you do and what you sell. To me, that's not the best way to. So you asked about, when I'm out in the community, and again, not doing that much these days, I would start a conversation, however you start a conversation, and it's funny, in New York or the tri-state area, this is, not as common, but I've done a lot of traveling all over the country and all over the world. And it's very common elsewhere, right? You go to the South, you visit people and, you visit the South and you talk to people and, after like 2 minutes of conversation, they say, hey, listen, you should come over tonight for dinner. That would never happen in New York, but in this area, we're a little bit guarded. But I find that when you break space and you actually make an interruption, people actually are very, very surprising how open-minded people are. So whatever it is, hey, did you go to Penn State? Hey, if there's a long line, which is not common these days, but if there's a long line, hey, what are they giving coffee away for free here? What's going on here? Whatever, just start a conversational. It could be situational. It could be something they're wearing. It could be current event related, hey, who do you think is going to win the World Series? Whatever happened. And of course, that's, not happening because of COVID, but you get the idea. You make a conversation and, just like a dog, and I'm not calling people dogs, but, you get 3 reactions. The dog either kind of, wags its tail and wants to lick your hand and, it wants to be petted, or, kind of doesn't care and it walks away, or it growls and barks. So if you get the growl and bark reaction, okay, take your hand away. So you just start a conversation. And after the pleasantries of kind of that initial conversation in terms of, what that icebreaker was, oh, you went to Penn State, what'd you study, or whatever it is, then I'll get into either where you're from or what do you do, depending upon where the conversation goes. And after you've done that, where you're from and dig into that a little bit, did you grow up there? Did you move here? Blah, 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 blah. There's a lot in that conversation, married, kids, what, and then what do you do? Right. And often that can bring up a lot of information in terms of, are you happy? How long you doing it? What some of the challenges you have. Is it a long-term career? Is it something you want to do? And after that conversation, it could be 5-8 minutes. Believe it or not, and when people want to speak or not, if they look, I'm not going to keep a conversation going that long. You could tell from their body language they want to go, but after a conversation, it's like you're friends and it's normal. It really is, right? Think about it, right? How did the friends you grew up with, how did you meet them? You met them. It wasn't like you weren't born and then they were your friends. You had to meet them. So
let me interject here, Steve. So,
sure.
This idea of how to talk to people, and Glow says, hi, Glow. Glow, please send us your networking questions or questions you think some of the folks that you're coaching would want to hear and for us to address. But one of the things that I'd like you to talk about is, okay, so these are the tips and tricks to sort of get into these conversations there from the books that you read and other connections. How does it benefit me, right? I think, people want to understand how it's benefited your business. What are the positive results that you've seen from these conversations that actually do benefit your business? Because, if you're watching this and you're like, well, I want to network better so that I can sell more, right? How has that helped you? How can you sell more from focusing on other people almost completely? How does that benefit you? And what are the success stories that actually benefit you and your network?
Sure. I mean, there's tons of stories, but I'll just start with one and then maybe I'll go to another. So I was in White Plains at the City Center. I'm not sure if this is still open today, the Nordstrom Rack, but it was open at the time. It was prior to COVID. And, as my wife and I, and not to stereotype, but at least for me as a guy, it's not the most exciting thing to do in my life is going shopping. I'm a kind of guy that, I like to hunt. I just go, I know what I need. I go get it, a little different with my wife. So I'm kind of like a little bit, just trying to figure out what else I could do. There's another gentleman who I kind of felt like, maybe he was in the same boat as me. I probably broke the ice and said, hey, how long you've been out here, dealing with, this, torture or whatever I said. I don't remember the specifics. Nice guy. Turned out at the time he was the GM for an upscale restaurant in White Plains. We had a great conversation similar to what I said. And, obviously after breaking the ice and kind of getting to know each other, where you're from, what do you do? At the end of that, hey, we should stay in touch. That's, my go-to line. Let's stay connected. Let's stay in touch. We exchanged information. It was probably cell phones. I texted him. And over the years, we have stayed in touch. We've connected here and there. We connect on LinkedIn. We've had back and forth conversations on text and phone. And I would say, I don't know. And I follow his career. He became the GM to a very upscale Greenwich Country Club, and then went to another Greenwich Country Club. And over time, this could be 7 years later, but he became a client for me on one of my technology company projects. So that's an example, right? And I could give you tons more, but that's one way through creating connections, and you stay in touch, right? It's not going to happen from one interaction, right? Very rare, but you never know, right? Your network is your net worth, right? So grow your network, and that's a great way you can grow it is organically through just living your life.
Yeah, there's a expression. My wife is Mexican, so we speak a lot of Spanish in the house, and there's a great way whenever we talk about doing something. And Sammy says hi, by the way, that you're looking good, Steve. I agree, Steve. You're looking real good. I like that jacket.
Thank you, sir.
There's an expression, vale la pena. Vale la pena. I think I'm saying it right. Let me mispronounce it now of all times, right? But it means, it was worth it. And I think that people have to understand that, investment in yourself, investment in long-term relationships, it's worth it. Vale la pena, right? So, it's one of those things that you need to understand, and I love to hear the business case. I know that early on, even not knowing how to network the right way, by putting myself out there with MPI, Meeting Professionals International. So I'm hosting a 12 p.m. thing for meeting planners. Any meeting planners that want to be a part of that on Wednesdays at 12. I'm hosting that, and we're doing some great work. And I actually took the format that I learned from Master Networks and brought that over to MPI, because in 2008, I was struggling. I'd been laid off from a job. I was doing different things, but that was like my professional connection to the professional world. And MPI was struggling a little bit to find their way. They're doing webinar stuff, which in this day and age, if you're online and just having somebody talk at you, that's not really engaging. And what we're doing with Master Networks and what I'm doing with the MPI chapter is we're having this group conversation. So yeah, there's these rooms with like 30, 40 people in them sometimes. But then we're breaking out where we're having these engaging conversations, sometimes just one-on-one, sometimes 1-on-3, 1-on-4, that kind of thing. And that allows for such the ability to network and actually engage and do the things that you're talking about. I'd love you to speak to how you think people should be networking in this pandemic digitally, what they should be doing to best use the time.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Like you said earlier, Cameron, there's so many things you can do now. It can be overwhelming. And if you have, a day gig, like I do, you can go over the top and lose focus on what you have to do to bring in the money. So it's a balancing act, right? But there's so many ways, and the two ways that I find the best right now is through LinkedIn. I think it's a great business networking, business network, right? And
I think it's underutilized too. It's got organic
is.
reach right now. You should be posting a lot of different things, but keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks for the feedback, Sammy. I see that.
Sammy says Steve does such a great job of listening to the people he's connecting with, and I agree.
I appreciate that. And it's a skill I learned, right? Very much a skill that you could learn. You're not born with it. So, I'm busy reading the comments below. I got distracted from what we're talking.
Yeah, it says open-ended questions are key. People love to talk about themselves, but you were talking about LinkedIn. So let's get that on.
Thank you. I got to stay focused. So I don't know. I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD, but it's possible to have it. But anyway, so I have so LinkedIn is great, and you're right, Cameron. It is completely underutilized. So I'm constantly, because there's a section in LinkedIn that says, you may know. So I look in that and see if there's anybody I want to connect with, and many times it's funny. I often I'll have like 150 mutual connections. So often I'll connect, and just grow the network. My goal is to grow the network, and I believe it was, I would say 6 years ago, I probably had just shy of 200 connections. And over the last, 6, 7 years, it's now, and I know there's people that have bigger ones. You probably have bigger than this, but mine is at over 10,000. And that's important, right? So to grow your network, right? And then the second thing I do is I utilize LinkedIn. And when a new connection comes on, I immediately send a message, and after a few exchanges, I'd like to connect with them and have a phone call, because I believe that, great, we have a new connection here, but what good is it if we just know what we know about each other in our profile, what's written? To me, again, it's all about know, like, and trust, right? So how do you know somebody, right? It's a great adrenaline hit. Okay, now I have 160 connections, or in my case, I'm at 10,022. Okay, great. What good is it, right? It doesn't help us. So let's leverage it. Let's create, let's create a relationship. Let's see how either of us can add value for each other, right? So I'm a big believer in that. Some people respond. It's amazing to me that people they connect with you and they don't even respond. So if you're listening and that's you, I would recommend change. I politely recommend you change. Not for me, if it's some other people. You're on to network. Let's engage, right? And if you don't want to connect, then at least respond and say, I'm not interested in connecting. And more than likely, what I'll probably do is unconnect with us, because if you don't want to connect, why should we connect? But I'm very polite. Very important to be polite and business, professional, right, and so forth, right? The second thing I'll do is I'll actually there's a lot of tools on LinkedIn. One where the notifications when somebody has a new job change or promotion or work anniversary. I don't like the one that's about happy birthday. I think it's a little stalkish. But the other ones I click, and I'll say I don't do anything special or custom. But if I get a response, I actually again we'll try to engage and suggest that we get on a phone call. Some of those people we have already had a phone call again. So let's catch up. Let's see where you're at these days. I'd love to see what you're doing, what you're up to. Maybe I could be of value to you. And then, others, and others I had never connected with. So I'm a big believer in that. Also big believer in posting content, right? And adding value, right? I think I shared this, but Friday afternoon is Fired Up Friday. I love doing that, and whatever else I could do to add value and be relevant for people. So LinkedIn is huge, and being active on LinkedIn, not just have a profile, but actively building a network, actively, trying to interact with people is huge, right? And then the other thing is I agree, master networks and other networking organizations, right? Because everything is remote and digital today, we could visit so many. And again, it can be overwhelming, but we can visit and we can go and make new connections and be able to, see if there's synergies and talk to people and then have these video exchanges, right? Where we do Zoom meetings or whatever the platform is, Skype, whatever it is. And be able to connect with those people and build and continue to further those conversations. So for me right now, those are the two main pieces. What I've done many networking talks on networking, and I talk about the three-legged stool of networking. Right now, one of those legs is broken, which is community networking. But because I'm not really going out much, and you can't do that. It's the piece I talked about just living my life and meeting people. But the other is social media networking, right? And the other piece of it is traditional networking, like master networks or some of the other networks. So those three things are really important when we're out of COVID-19. But for now, at least leveraging those two for sure, right? Traditional networking, again, it's all remote and digital today, and LinkedIn or some type of business networking through social media.
And I got to say, I mean, I've been taking advantage of this time and on the community networking thing because people's time is different now. Reach out to somebody that you haven't hung out in a while with. You can go. I did social distance bike riding with a good friend that I hadn't really spent a lot of time with. So there are opportunities if you seek them out, and they could be good for your mental health as well as your business health. I think that's such a great piece of it. And then Facebook might be a little bit more of the community networking thing, and then you got LinkedIn, which is more of your social. Like there's different aspects. So I don't necessarily think that this time is providing any less opportunity. You just have to take advantage of it. You got to schedule it. You have to be systemized with it. I know this week's Master Network session was all about what are you doing to reach out to your contacts? Do you have a system in place? Are you managing it? Dave Hauser, I connected with him this week, and he mentioned something. I'll share the screen so people can see it. I haven't utilized it, but Dave Hauser liked it, which is this Copilot AI thing, which actually reaches out to your LinkedIn contacts. So if you have a bunch of LinkedIn contacts and some people may not respond, I've actually had mixed results with reaching out to people on LinkedIn because some people are looking at their social media and their messages on social media regularly, and some people aren't. Very similar to email as well. Some people pay attention to their email and some people don't. So I found that, it just depends on who you are and how you're reaching out to people, but having these different ways can be very helpful. And there are tools that you can use, whether you're doing social media, being on something like a later kind of thing, which is where you can plan out 30 days of, it doesn't have to be particularly difficult, especially if you systemize it. What kind of systems do you have in place? I know you talked about how you reach out to folks with the pieces on LinkedIn, but now you've got all these contacts in your database. How do you go through that and actually utilize the folks that you know on a regular basis?
So yeah, I mean, great question. And so LinkedIn it becomes my CRM for a bit. In the sense that everybody has a work anniversary once a year. So if I'm using the tool on LinkedIn, I'm at least touching somebody once a year on a work anniversary. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. And again, if somebody has a job change or a bit or promotion, I'm sending a message with that. So that's one way to do it, and I'm on that pretty regularly. The second thing that I do, because not everybody on my phone is in LinkedIn, right? So as I've developed relationships with people, you might think this is crazy. I'm a big believer in Outlook and calendar invites. I actually have a little calendar reminder from me to reach out to, Joe Smith, right? And I might set it for 6 months from now, or a year from now, or a couple months from now, and just to say hello. So it's in my calendar, and then after I reach out, I might advance it another 6 months or a year. And that's how I stay relevant and talking to people. And I find it very valuable. And I've done that both in the business world. I think it's a very valuable way to do business, right? When you're, if you're in a consulting or sales role. And I do that also in from a networking perspective, and just staying in touch and connecting with people by putting it in my calendar and reminding myself, okay, reach out to Cameron Toth.
Such a great tip with as I meet somebody, putting it on the calendar, reach out to them. It's such an easy thing. If you have a calendar, a digital calendar, or even a physical calendar, just saying, okay, 6 months from now, 2 weeks from now, whatever your metric is, I'm going to follow up with this person because usually, and this is the way it usually goes for me, if I connect with somebody on LinkedIn and I don't immediately reach out, they're just in the network and they're floating, right? They're just there.
Floating out there. Yeah, black hole. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Cameron. Go ahead,
I
Cameron.
was gonna say, if I engage, there's usually a little bit of exchange. And then again, past that, everybody's got their lives going on. If I don't set up something where I'm doing something with them down the line, now they're lost again into the mix. So putting that thing on the calendar, like, let me follow up with somebody. And I got to get better at sending out the newsletter. I have all these contacts. I don't do anything. Do you do anything on like a newsletter or gathering people into a pool? And if you don't, should you be?
I'm not a big believer in that personally for me. Doesn't mean it's wrong. I know that there's, programs like MailChimp and Constant Contact. And to be honest with you, when I get those, I mean, nothing wrong with them. But for me, when I get them, I know they're spam and I don't typically read them. When I get an email or a message that looks like it was written specifically from one person to me, I read it. So I'm more of a personal touch guy. But I want to just go back to kind of how I manage my contacts and connections. In my phone, I take, after meeting somebody, and this is a tip I read on, How to Win Friends, although it was written, it wasn't done digitally back then, but I think you put it on the back of the business card, right? But all the notes about the person. I remember when my dad had a liquor store. I grew up around the family business, and he had one in the city. And there was a guy named Bob who would come in. He was I forget what company. It was like a shoe cleaning company. He sold like shoe cleaning product, and he would come into my dad's store, and somehow he knew everybody's birthday, and it was amazing. And I know he didn't just remember it; he had notes about it, right? So I'm not getting people's birthdays, but what I'm saying is I'll take notes and where we met, what they do, where they're from. I might even know, if they told me they were married with kids, as much. And I'm not interrogating people, but in conversation that comes up, and I'm writing notes. And so it's in my contacts, right on my iPhone, right in their contact in the note area.
It's how you can help people, right? Because now you know something about them, and it comes front of mind when you talk to that next person. Now I can connect somebody, right?
And by the way, if I'm taking good notes, which I do, and it says, he's a plumber, right? So I could go into my phone, I could do a search, plumber, and anyone that I wrote notes that he's a plumber is going to come up right in that search. I mean, I know people have these sophisticated CRMs, but I mean, I'm an iPhone guy, and the iPhone is great. I use the calendar. I use the notes in my phone. LinkedIn is another way, and boom, I'm happy. I'm good. I'm managing my connections really well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we got to post something after this, like different ways to manage your contacts, because I think a lot of people could use that. One of the ways that I do it, because I'm an Android and Google guy, and one of the ways that I manage it is by making sure that I have groups of contacts so that for anything specific that I'm looking for, whether it's event planners or real estate, or I have all those kind of folks in one spot so that I can really like deep dive. Somebody's looking for something. Oh yeah, I got that in my network, and I can hook you up with that. And that's
absolutely
a great tactic.
Yeah.
In terms of long-term relationships, especially ones that are around business, what do you do to service your business contacts? From a networking angle? Obviously, you're a connector, somebody that people should know. If you haven't figured it all out already, Steve is open to meeting you. You should set up a face-to-face with Steve. You should try to bring him into your network, because being a part of his network is going to be a moneymaker for you. I truly believe that. But what do you do to sort of give back to those contacts that have brought money into your life? And is there something specific that you do? Are there other strategies you utilize?
Absolutely. So, kind of my go-to when I'm meeting somebody, whether it be through networking or just living my life. The first thing that I mention is I have a lot of connections, a lot of contacts, and maybe I can connect you with somebody. Maybe I can open some doors. It's to me, it's the best value, right? I've created this resource, right? 10,000 contacts and connections on LinkedIn, right? 16,000 on my phone, right? That's something that's valuable, right? And what can I bring to the table for you? Well, if once we get to know each other and there's a know, like, and trust, maybe I'll open a door for you to somebody in my network, right? So, and as I do, feel good about somebody, one of the things that I'll invite them to do often, and I'm not suggesting I'll do that with everybody, but I say, listen, go through because here's the challenge, and Cameron, you might deal with this as well, especially as we have a big network. A lot of the people ask, excuse me, how do you keep track of everybody, and don't you feel overwhelmed with knowing everybody, and yeah, there's a piece of that where you don't necessarily, and our master network chapter, it's like 30 professionals in there, and it's just shy of 30, and I'd love to say I have each one of their professions in my head, and I'm keeping an eye out for them, but it's kind of random. It's kind of like, I remember back in the day, I was part of a different networking group, and somebody, I was in the, we have a bunch of cubicles, and somebody bellows out, "Hey, of a good painter," and I happened to my chapter was a painter, so I said, "Yeah, I do," and of course made the connection. But that's few and far. It doesn't happen often. So what I prefer to do is, instead of trying to say, okay, if I think of somebody who needs an event, staffing opportunity, I would say, "Hey, Cameron, why don't you go onto my LinkedIn? Why don't you come up with a half dozen, or if I really like them, a dozen people that you'd like me to introduce you to?" And I'll put together a 3-way message where I'll include you, Cameron, the person, and myself. You don't need to be connected with them. I could do it on LinkedIn. And when you get the message, you hit reply all, and you're now communicating with, of course, me as well, but that person. And you could start a dialogue. And it's a great resource I've been able to do with people. I've done that with some young people that are just got out of college and looking to, get some good connections. Because what you're looking for probably better than I do. And granted, it's not a hot lead. It's probably more of a referral, if you will, but it's a great way that I could add value to my connections.
That's a great strategy. I love that. I love that so much, because I think that's one of those things where it's one of those things that's just underutilized. Again, LinkedIn is one of those things that just people don't take as much advantage of as they can. Glow says, "This is such a good investment of my time today." Thank you, Glow. We appreciate that. And we have a surprise. We're going to add a little sunshine into our life. Hey, Sammy.
Sammy Sunshine.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. How are you?
So I was really excited that Sammy jumped on, because she is like the tracking queen. So tell us, Sammy, what you do to track these interactions, because you approach this a little bit differently than Steve, but you're definitely a connector as well. So I'd love to hear your different spin and take on this whole thing. And for anybody that's watching that doesn't know, Sammy is an amazing connector for the Master Network folks in the New York region. She is a real estate just dynamo. So happy to have you on, Sammy. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I hopped on because Steve Spiro is one of my idols, and I love listening to everything that he does. And I love to follow what he's doing because he's such a dynamic individual. But as far as tracking goes, I really want to make sure that I'm investing my time right. So when I have a face-to-face with someone, like Steve said earlier, if they're not responsive to me, I'm not going to waste any more time with them. But if there's someone that I'm looking to connect with, I want to make sure that I'm tracking our relationship and tracking how often we're meeting. Because if we're meeting, 5, 6, 7 hours every month, but there's no return on investment for the relationship other than just enjoying each other's time, I want to make sure that I'm giving the time to the people that are doing well for my business, because, time is money. So you want to make sure that you're utilizing the connections that you have in the right way.
I want to Steve's probably looking at that like scared, and I I hear that and I'm scared too, because I'm like spreadsheet and tracking the relationship. But I think, for salespeople that, this is their job every single day. And, there's numbers on the line, having that sort of piece to it, especially if you're reporting to a boss. At some point, Toth staffing and, part of the pandemic, I'm going to transition and we're going to call the company something different. And I'm getting excited because I'm building things and we'll release it at some point, but it'll take form. And, there'll be people in other parts of the country selling for this company. I'm going to be looking at the numbers, and you got to, if I'm giving you money, right? I'm giving you cashola. You better tell me what you're doing in a specific kind of way. I don't want just like freely. I think it's a little bit different if you own the business and you don't have to like report to anybody. But I love that tracking idea as it comes into it. Steve, when you are looking at, a business opportunity, a new initiative, how do you handle going after the segment of your contacts or new contacts for that specific? What's your strategy that you use, or how do you think about it? How do you go after that?
That's a pretty broad question, right? Pretty open-ended. In our chapters meeting this morning, the book that came up was the E-Myth Revisited, which is interesting that you mentioned it as well. And that's a phenomenal book, right? And it talks about being in your business, being in your business versus being, on your business, right? And thinking about your business versus trying to just be so much into the doing of your business, right? So I think thinking is really important, it's a famous book I love, which I think I referenced earlier in this conversation, is Think and Grow Rich, but very few people think. So I try to think, if I was in somebody's shoes, and again, this is more important now than ever before. It's being empathetic. It's how can I help this person? What are they dealing with, and how can I help them? And I really try not to just try to go and sell something. I really want to see how I could be valued. But for those sales professionals, right, it's you're getting paid to go out there and actually sell whatever it is, a product, a solution, whatever it is. So you have to do that. But again, my mentality is it's empathetic. What's going on for this person, and today more than ever, we have to be very empathetic because of the environment we're in right now. So that's really my mentality. I'm very persistent in general, whether it be through connecting and networking or through business relationships. I don't know the exact statistic, but I know that it's like you got 30 touches before you actually will actually make a sale. So persistence is very, very important, but it's adding value persistence versus annoying persistence. That's the difference here. So not sure if I answered your question, but that's my mentality in going out there.
No, I think, and maybe it's just a case of, because you have such a large network, you just don't run into the issue of like, you just automatically know who to go to when you do have a product offering. Does that have something to do with it? Or is it more of a situation of, the phone is always ringing? Or because
no, the phone is definitely not always ringing. I'd love for that to be the case one day, but it's not always ringing. So I mentioned I do consulting for an organization called Quadient, and I have a very specific defined territory, the organization is very, very much into Salesforce. So I have a patch, and I work that patch, right? I have a very systematic approach in going out, and I know in terms of what I'm marketing and what I'm consulting on, what business verticals are more relevant for what I can and how I can help them with what I have to offer. So I'm trying to be very specific in that way, but it's systematic, and just like I mentioned with contacting, I've got a rhythm that I'll follow. Yeah.
That's awesome. So there are some spreadsheets in your life after all.
Yeah, they may not be classic spreadsheets, but yeah, the same idea exists for sure. Definitely tracking for sure.
Sammy, do you want to weigh in on that? Like, how do you go after, like, I mean, I know you're running into that issue all the time of like, okay, I got a new house on the market. I got to, or I got to, I'm forgetting the duality of being a realtor, right? So there's somebody that's buying and there's somebody that's selling, right? So those two challenges, how do you walk into that and approach that, especially utilizing your network and networking?
So I think time management is key, and that's an ever evolving skill that I'm working on. But connecting with people is what gets me going. I get so much enjoyment out of just meeting people. So I'm like Steve, where I don't really have a specific person that I connect with. There are certain categories of people that I would get more referrals from in general, but really for me, I just like to connect with anybody and everybody. So there's really no method to that madness, but there is time management tools that I use for that. So I'm not giving, 6 hours a day to just anybody. I'm very structured with my time, and that's to protect me because I am so giving. But as far as like client time, like for working with buyers and sellers, I have specific time in my calendar that I'm making sure that I'm focusing on my clients and their needs and all the things that need to get done to service them in the best way.
I love that because I think there's people that are dealing with so much in their lives, especially right now, right? Because, if you're family, I know I had to like redesign my whole schedule because I'm dealing with kids and wife and just trying to make things work and trying to satisfy different audiences in terms of, staff that I'm trying to stay connected with and clients that I'm trying to reach out to and new opportunities that I'm trying to take advantage of. And then master networks, which, we were talking about that earlier, Steve, just the idea of like being overwhelmed with all the different opportunities there. Just really crazy. Sammy, thanks so much for jumping on here. I really appreciate it. I'm going to give Steve the last word as we get to the top of the hour. But I really appreciated you being a part of this. Thanks, Sammy.
Anytime.
Thanks, Sammy. That was great. Hey, Kevin, I just want to mention, and with her not being on, I feel more comfortable saying it, but what's great about Sammy is she's always looking to add value. And honestly, she, like out of the blue, one day she just called me, said, I was thinking about you. And that is the kind of relationship building. So now when and if, me and my wife are looking for a new place, there's a very good chance we'll give her a call because she's relevant and she's in my mind and so forth. So it's very, very kudos to Sammy and what you do and what you're about.
Oh, it's great. And I mean, just the fact that I was like, hey, you want to jump on? And she was like, yeah, all right. Like that kind of thing, being open to those opportunities. There's a lot of people that, are quick to say no. And the folks that, have that ability to be in that positive mind frame and say yes to opportunity. It's refreshing and it's nice and it's enjoyable. As we get to the end of this here, I'd love to get, and Sammy says, I love you, Steve. I'd love to sort of get your final take for the day. I'm sure we'll be able to do this again. And anything to support my friends, I'm always here for the both of you. Thanks, Sammy. I'd love to get your kind of final take on like where you think people should be positioning themselves as networkers, as folks in business, what kind of direction they should be taking and how they should be following up with people, particularly during this time. I'd love to get your take on that.
So obviously I mentioned a lot of books because I'm a big, as I mentioned, reader. I would recommend if they haven't read it, go get the book or listen to the book, Go Giver. Don't remember the title, the author's name, but just be willing to give and go out there and look to serve, look to help, look to be a resource for people. And that will attract the right things. And so now more than ever, I think people want to connect. They're craving interaction. And granted, this is not, in person, but it's as close as you can get to it. So I recommend, go out there, make connections, connect with people. Now is not a good time to be shy and introverted. Let's get out there and just, make the world better because make the room better, make the world better because you're here.
That's an awesome message. I really appreciate it, Steve. And can you tell everybody what are the best ways to get in contact with you?
So I'll give out my personal cell phone number. Please don't spam me, but it's 914-490-9782, 914-490-9782. I think it's posted on my LinkedIn, and also I'll just give my personal Gmail, which is Steve L. Spiro at gmail.com, right? No dots.
So I'm still struggling with my technology over here. I apologize for that. I'm trying to get my theme song queued up, and I still haven't figured out all the things of it. So you got a little preview of that. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I just gave my Gmail, stevelspiro@gmail.com. And also just, message me or connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. So just look me up, Steve Spiro. You'll find me. I'm probably, probably one of the top searches because pretty well connected.
That's awesome, Steve. So connect with Steve on LinkedIn. I'll definitely drop the link down into the comments below. With that, thank you very much. Steve, will you sign us off, take everybody out of here?
What was that? Say it again.
Say goodbye to everybody.
Great seeing you, Cameron. You're the best. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate your time. And I recommend everybody connect with Cameron and make sure you get to know him better as well. So thanks again for everything.
You're awesome. All right, now we're going to do the theme song the right way to play us out. Thank you very much, Steve. Hang out, and I'll talk to you in just a second. All right. All right, now I press play and nothing's happening. You see, this is the challenge with the technology here. Oh, it's killing me. There we go. There we go. I'll get it together, guys. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. Weekdays at 11 Eastern Time, Biz Dev Live. Weekdays at 11 Eastern Time, Biz Dev with C. Brought to you by Cameron T. Biz Dev with C. Brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.